2012, The Return of Quetzalcoatl says that historians and archaeologists have biased us to think of prehistoric or pre-modern cultures as societies of scarcity. This was certainly not the case in ancient Britain, as they had at the time, as well as the determination to plan and build their enormous outdoor temples, constructing from 5 to 10,000 stone circles over a 1,000-year period. Yeah, so they had the ingenuity, and they had the wherewithal, and they had the skill. Now, Bob Quinn, in a book called The Atlantean Irish, he says that in the summer of 2001, I listened to a young Newgrange guide dismissing a visitor's suggestion that the extraordinary rock designs, and these are most obviously the snake-like coils that represent the 19-year metonic cycle, have astronomical implications. He suggested they were hallucinogenic doodles. Now let's pause here and analyze this, because this was also my own personal experience when I first started researching this particular subject on Ireland. It was about 1979, and in earnest about 1982. I think in that 1983 or 84, or possibly early 85, I went out into the field and had the misfortune of running into these Trinity University, guides who have their spiel about Newgrange and various other sites, and I was told the same thing. If you're on one of those tours, you have the misfortune to have to listen to the gibberish that these people have been scripted to read out and to say. You'll find that you dare not ask a question, you dare not point out the obvious, you dare not bring sound theories, because they're not going to reciprocate. Just in this case, where this author, who's an expert on the Celts, remarking on these stones and the etchings and the fact that they're astronomically based, or at least this visitor, he's saying that this visitor was pointing this out to the guide, only to be told, oh no, those are hallucinogenic doodles. Interestingly, that's what Barry Fell was told by very prestigious archaeologist and geologist when he pointed out to them that there was ogham, this is ancient Irish writing, stone writing, in America. Almost word for word, he was told the same thing. It's just, hey Barry, it's just hallucinogenic doodles, pay it no mind. And, of course, he knew that this was preposterous nonsense. Now, the Druidic order was apparently tripartite in nature. That means threefold. There were the Ovates, the Bards, and the elite Druids, like we said, the Olam, the elite Druids who presided over all. The order was not to enforce hierarchy, but to make sure that only the pure had access to sacred knowledge. As we said earlier, very important to be pure of mind when you're doing the Druidic duties of healing the earth and healing in general. And therefore not anyone can just do that, nor should anyone be allowed to do it. So part of the order of the shamanic peoples of the world, like the Druids, was to make sure also their work was not just anabolic, it was also catabolic in nature. You had to make sure that the pestilential, parasitical, toxic individuals had no chance whatsoever of rising to positions of power. And we could do that with that kind of thing today, because it's exactly what you find in today's world. It's not the cream that rises to the top, it's the scum. Well, that was not happening in ancient days. But back to the etymology. The word ovate, or vate, V-A-T-E, comes from the Irish fed, from which we get the words fate and faith. You see, so the hard V is transmogrified, becomes a soft F sound. So faith and fate. These are words that come from the Irish vate, meaning one of the Druids, a name for a Druid. This is where we get the words Veda and Vedic and Edda, the Norse Edda. And we even get the word Vatican from this. They all derive from this Irish word, the place of faith, the place of the men of faith, and so on. The word bard may derive from Boread, meaning the northern again, because these were men of the northwest. These were people who watched the northern sky. These were people of Arcadia, Hyperborea. The word bard may be the origin of the bar, when lawyers are called to the bar. And speaking in brief about their pantheon, we discover something again that was cannibalized. The chief god of the Druids was the stag god known as Cernunnos, or also Herne, H-E-R-N-E. This is then picked up further into Europe, into the east, by the Greeks, and possibly the Etruscans, you see, and we have Herm, or Hermes. The meaning of the word Hermes meaning secret, the secret one, or the keeper of the secrets, the secret tradition. Hermes, we understand that is the, in Egypt that's Thoth, and also amongst the Romans it's Mercury, the god Mercury. And look how common the symbol of Mercury is, the caduceus, and the symbol of Mercury. You find it in Piccadilly Circus, you find it on newspapers, you find it on the friezes of buildings. It's a very commonly known symbol. Well, just realize every time you see the Grecianized version of Mercury, that's based on a much more ancient god from Ireland, Herne, the stag god, the god with the antlers. And as the picture on the bottom there, bottom left, shows you, this is Pashupati. This is Shiva, one of the earliest gods known in India. Again, emphasizing the connections between the West and the East. They have the same god in the same pose, representing exactly the same concepts. In the book, Volume 1 of the Irish Origins, we go into this movement and we address this whole idea of the dispersion of the Western area. And when we see very fair children and fair people as far away as the Tarim Basin in China, we even find them in Australia and Tasmania. We certainly find the tradition in India. The girl on the left is Pakistani, with blonde hair. The girl on the right, piercing blue eyes, from Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. When you go over there, you find it's very understood about these ancient traversals and ancient relationships that the modern scholars will do anything to deny. As we said, the Druids are divided. They loved and adored the number 3. They even divided their own order into 3. And that's picked up today when we have schools that divide themselves into houses. We have Congress, we have legislation. You see, we have the judiciaries. We have a lot of tripart divisions, flags, and so on. Just check out the very shape of the pyramid. Just check out the shape of Buckingham Palace. That's the image on the bottom. The image on the top right there is the Buckingham Palace seen from above. The Jewish menorah is a take on the 3. The Congress room design, occult symbols. We have broadcasting Christian networks in America. We've got corporate logos, you see. We have PBS corporations. We've got banks. Their logos tell you a story. We've got the headdress of the popes, the mitre. We've got television shows that employ the tripart division. We're going to ask where that came from. Here is a Jesuit ceremony which emphasizes the 3 initiations and matriculation in 3. Tremendous study just to look at the word 3. Now the word Druid has several probable related origins. Most likely it derives from the Gaelic Dreda, pronounced Dri or Dred, meaning kindred, or from Druvid, that means one who knows. Vid, Veda, just like we showed in a previous slide there, the Druvid, one who knows, or one who has knowledge. Now the suffix vid can also be rendered wid with a W. That's the root of the word wizard and the word wise. We find this syllable in Vedic and Veda that connote the highest wisdom. It may also derive from Druthin, right? So Druid may derive from Druthin, that means the servant of truth. In German, it means of God. An Irish priestess was also known as a Druth, or a Dri, a Dre. We derive the word truth from Druthin. The hard D at the beginning of the word is softened and anglicized as the letter T. So truth and Druid is the same word. Druids are servants of truth. Another acceptable rendering is from the Welsh Gaelic Dervid, or Derwyd, meaning superior priest or inspector. and from, guess that's pronounced Draoeth, meaning magician. In Persian we have Duri, meaning noble and holy man. This Dervid is very similar, of course, to the modern name David. So, King David, Camp David, the term David, the name David, where did that come from? We also see, when we study Druidry, this enormous reverence for trees and the emphasis on the tree of God. In this Babylonian, Sumerian picture, we see the primal couple, a sort of Adam and Eve rendition, with a sacred tree in the center, with astrological symbols at the top, and on the far right we see the serpentine symbol, which has always been used from the darkest ages of antiquity as the hieroglyphic for the female. We see the horned helmet of the bull or goat horns and the central tree. Dudley Wright, he writes that there is a tradition amongst the Jews that the tree of knowledge was named Dar, D-A-R, and that this was supposed to be the oak, whence Dar in Irish means an oak, and also implies wisdom. This is why you'll often hear it said that, of course, the word Druid means men of the oak. Well, in a way it did, because D-A-R, Darid, or Dur, or Dar, this word meant the oak and the men of the oak. And we find this word in terms like elder, or alder, the alder tree. We find it in Derry, like the city of Derry, or Dwar, and even the word door. And of course we know when we study Druidism that some of their shapes of these ancient sites are portal-like, like at Newgrange, for instance. So the Druids are the doorkeepers, the gatekeepers. But it implies a spiritual gatekeeping. Now the name Asur, meaning Osiris, comes from the Egyptian Asar, meaning sacred tree. Osiris's relationship with the ash tree suggests a Druidic connection. That's right, the very name of the god Osiris, when rendered in Egyptian as Asar, is very close to the As, which was always known as the ash tree, like Ashtaroth and Ashtarte. One of the reasons for this, not the only reason, is because from the sky, looking down, Egypt itself, the Nile, as a secondary symbol. First of all, the symbol is of the sacred river, of course, but from the air it looked like the branches of a tree. The trunk was the Nile, and as it came to the delta, it branched out and looked like a sacred tree. So Egypt, in fact Egypt in ancient days, was known as the land of the tree and the serpent. And this implies many things, and I've gone into this in other presentations. The great goddess was often shown as a tree, or standing inside a tree of nourishment. The chief goddesses of Egypt were always, just like as in Ireland, connected to the sacred tree. In my opinion, this is where the origins of the Kabbalah are, because the land of the tree and the serpent, well, as a symbol, the tree and the serpent, that's the Kabbalah. That's the ancient doctrine, the mystery school teachings, known as the Kabbalah. In my reading of ancient mythology and history and traditions, these sacred traditions, there's no doubt in my mind that the fact that it uses a symbol of a tree, however stylized, and a serpent implies that it's Aryan in origin. But we always see the sacred tree. We always see the sacred tree. The Buddha sat under the tree. Lord Krishna is always seen in proximity to the tree, just as the Scandinavian Odin was seen in connection to the tree. In Grecian images of the Muses, we find the sacred tree. And the Maya, that image on the bottom right there, shows the priest and the initiate sitting under the tree, the sacred tree. And the symbols of the tree can be found all over the media. In my work on Atlantis, of course, I point out that the DNA is a sacred tree. We find in medieval paintings, paintings of the Renaissance era, of the great masters and the pre-Renaissance artists, great emphasis on the tree. It's not just decorative, it's actually a message. In the Bible we hear about Moses meeting God at a sacred tree, or as they describe it, a burning bush. Adam and Eve at the famous tree in the Garden of Eden. What's all this tree symbolism? And in fact the cross, the symbol, however plagiarized and corrupted, of the Sun King hanging on the cross,